a recommendation that will have to be approved by the council after negotiation between Public Works and IMS.
But why wouldn't the budget be established based on the amount of work that's being done?
I've got two things. One, I agree with the commissioner down here, except that the statute doesn't say that we do it with the program manager. It says the commission with help from the city. There's nothing in that that says we have to have a program manager. So the first question is, do we have a program manager? The second thing, you say that this came from some recommendation. This commission never saw that recommendation. We had a list given to us with a long list of expenditures, and it showed $2.5 million for program management. We didn't know where that came. This commission didn't know where that number came from, or what it includes, or what it was, and we had very little, if any, discussion. We just got told it was going to happen, and it got cut to $840,000 for that first year. But we hadn't seen any report or any recommendation. I think it does matter on what they're actually going to be doing, what the work is, and just to come out here with a magic number and say we're going to do $1.5 million recommendation spend that we could spend on some other stuff. I want to know how much of this is, what do we get for our $250,000 worth of mentoring? I would like to have some reports on what we got for the $840,000 we spent this year. I'd like to have some discussion about what has happened and how, and where that money has gone, and how this $1.5 million is going to be spent before I think we ought to do it. Now, I'm all for developing and finalizing the master plan, but to assume it has to be done with the program manager, it could be done with more staff, it could be done with a number of different ways. I agree, Mayor. We don't get to choose who a contract's awarded to. I'm not indifferent to you that at all. But whether we have a contract is up to this commission.
And I'm not arguing that.
I know you're not.
I'm not arguing that at all.
And I wasn't arguing with yours either.
Okay. So there is a motion on the floor, and
I move to amend the motion that we move, instead of as per this recommendation, that we move forward to finalizing the master plan.
that sounds like the same.
Now, this one was to do it as per the way they got it spelled out here, and then the detail, which incorporates all kinds of things that haven't been decided
Okay, well,
yet.
say your amendment again.
That this commission move forward to work and put our efforts towards finalizing it, the development of the master plan.
All right, so there's an amendment on the floor. There's a second. Any questions about the amendment? All in favor? Show of hands. All in favor? All right. Motion, amendment carries. All right. So yeah, now back to the main motion as amended. All in favor? All right, motion carries. So we got what we wanted, which is to be able to move forward on finalizing the master plan. All right, next recommendation.
The next recommendation was dealing with the Maddox Road Bridge. McDowell, I'm sorry.
Is there a, or maybe Dr. Williams can speak to it, what's the process here? Is there going to be, I guess, an engineering deal done on the front end that we would need to fund, and then the construction based on what they find? And what's being asked here? What specifically, what is the ask in terms of the dollars?
We're requesting that this project be activated by the commission so that we could hire an engineer to come up with the plans for developing the proposed improvements for construction. And as you said, that there will be a budget for construction based on the estimated cost from.
Do we have a budget? Do we have a budget estimate for it?
Yes, sir. There is a budget.
Where is it?
Go back. Always. Right here.
That's what we're looking for.
$2 million.
Which includes water and sewer line replacement.
See, I think
That includes,
Yeah, it's in there.
that would be inclusive.
that inclusive of everything that's required to do the project.
So not to exceed $2 million
Yes.
for all engineering associated with the bridge or design work
Yes.
and to complete it, correct?
Right, and
Okay.
construction.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, in the past, when we looked at all those projects before, we had individual sheets with breakdowns of what was gonna be done. I mean, with your work sheet, but they had, here's what the grade did and where it was and all that kind of stuff. We had some information about these projects. This one, all we got a number, which, as we got told in the last meeting, all those numbers we looked at a year and a half ago were made up out of whole cloth and didn't have a basis. Does this one have any real basis for the estimate?
Yeah, I think, didn't we get that when because we had to vote on actually appropriating the funds, since this was an emergency situation that came up. So we voted on the appropriation of the emergency funds for McDowell Road. Is that- No, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about Robinson Road.
Robinson Road,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm thinking about Robinson Road, my bad.
We voted on Robinson Road.
Yeah, that's right. They're right there, they're right there so close together, that's what I'm
But
thinking.
remember now, that's up to 2 million. So if the design, let's just say the design cost maybe 200,000 and the actual bridge replacement cost maybe 1.3.
I'm saying, I'm just asking, unlike all those projects we approved before, where there's numbers all out, does this one have some basis in? I mean,
Yes, sir.
what you told us last month was that all those numbers we looked at a year and a half ago, get nothing, in effect. Yeah, you didn't put it quite, put work in
I don't know
it.
if I would say that.
Well, but do we have an estimate that says where this is?
We feel real confident. We're the bridge engineer for the county, Harris County. Most of these bridges we're responsible for, as the bridge engineer for the county. Comment is responsible for. That every bridge you drive over, we're responsible for. Inspecting, and if it's in the city is responsible for doing the bridge, but we're responsible as the bridge engineer for the county. We feel real good and confident about our numbers. We
Mr. Chair.
stand by them.
Mr. Chairman, based on that, I move that we approve up to $2 million for the replacement.
I'd second that.
All right, we're moving properly second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, ayes have it. Motion carries. We move to the third and final recommendation, which should probably send us to executive session.
Why is that executive session?
I'm asking for a recommendation, I'm asking for some guidance from legal. And the reason that I think executive session is because you're about to start talking about one consultant's numbers. And if by chance there's not this firm isn't selected, what if another one comes and uses? I'm just trying to make sure that we're not creating any kind of problem.
Mr. Chairman, I believe earlier you said there was some type of accounting or some type of budget that we were going to,
Right, that they will,
okay. Can we do that before?
Break out.
sure.
Give them a breakout of
Which is what I thought, so when I talked about those numbers, that's what I was meaning.
Oh,
in terms of
okay,
the executive
okay.
session. So I don't, what do you think, James? That's what I'm trying to make sure that we're determining.
If it came from a report, it was a recommendation to the city.
Well, no, these are their specific
Right, what
numbers.
we've done is, we've broken out. I think you asked for a breakout, we got a breakout.
Well, I did, but now I'm told that this $1.5 million just came up because that's what the recommendation came from that report a year and a half.
Well, you still
Right,
had
it's
to
the
create
same.
a budget
Right.
based on, for staffing purpose. You gotta create a budget to match, and we had to cut costs down, to make it match.
Yes, ma'am. You didn't get one? No. Okay. You can give it to me.
Blame him. Blame him.
May I say something?
Yes.
Interject? Under the Open Meetings Act, Section 4, we're supposed to be allowed to have access or copies of what y'all just passed out. So I was going to ask if y'all can make copies to pass out during the meeting, since these are the fees. Thanks.
And just for clarity, we are sending you a PDF during
Right.
this meeting.
Right.
Of our.
But I meant the fees that they're always discussing right now.
Where's the copy? I didn't
All
make
right, so
copies.
you said what now? I'm sorry.
I just meant the fees, not the book.
The fees, okay.
Yeah, not the book.
All right, well, I'm going to suggest, by way of motion, to go into executive session to discuss IMS's fees for reasons that it may deal with proprietary issues, and I'll look for a second on that motion. All right, been moved and properly second. All in favor,
Wait,
go ahead.
discussion.
Discussion, I'm sorry.
Are we discussing IMS's fees? The fee is $1.5 million, isn't it?
Well, we're discussing this, it looks to be the breakout of their fees, what they're
Okay,
charging.
So, does this correlate anywhere with the contract document? I mean, when we see program management services, do we know what, I mean, is that a, it's not talking about their hourly rates or anything like that, which I assume in a contract, if I'm not mistaken, John, in a contract, you would have an hourly rate for this engineer and that engineer and.
Not necessarily if it's lump sum. I mean, but we do have that breakout.
Now, that would, what I think would be fees and would.
We can
I think
provide,
that was-
we can provide that information.
I'm not,
to you.
excuse me, I'm not asking that, I'm just saying, I think that's what, I'm talking about executive session.
Yeah,
But I
but,
think that's what we get into
If-
executive session.
but if you recall in the last meeting, what I asked for was that there be, that breakout, because I wanted to make sure that for folks like me, who didn't understand the value of certain pieces of program management, that we could understand that. So if there's gonna be because we talked about hours the last meeting, and we talked about folks who went out to do surveys and stuff. So I wanted to be able to hear and to see what that looked like, which is why I think that the executive session would be appropriate, because I want to hear that. I want to hear those hours.
Let me ask one more question. Aren't the fees and the hours in the contract and in the invoices that's not up in public record over there with IMS's invoices, it includes hourlies and hourly rates, so it's already a public record? I mean,
Well-
I have a problem going to the executive session because it's not a public record with everything we're talking
Well,
about.
this isn't, there's no new agreement yet. I think this is
I
what,
thought we were told it's the same agreement, just continue with putting money into it.
well, there's a different, wouldn't we have to approve, wouldn't we have to approve a new budget?
We would, my understanding, you're asking us to approve $1.5 million to add on to year 2 of a 3-year contract. The contract's already in place.
Right, but-
And it's spelled out in detail with hourly rates and all that in it. All you're asking us to do is add $1.5 million for what they will spend this year. And if the contract's already there and it's a public record document and the invoices that they've invoiced under the public record, I don't know how discussing fees and rates is anything that's an executive session issue.
I think where we muddied the water was when we started talking about the possibility of not moving forward with IMS. So I think that muddied the water, which is what justifies us going into executive session. Because if we're talking about the possibility of not moving forward with IMS, and that means that there's a possibility that other people would have an opportunity to compete.
And, Mr. Mayor, here's my problem, if I can, as program manager. We have brought before you a lot of different contracts, a lot of different firms. And our contract is the only one that you've asked about fees. We've had people, engineering firms making $2 million, $2.5 million, $3 million. And no one has asked for hourly breakout. No one has asked for a breakout of the fees. But all of a sudden you ask for the program management contract service. And that's, I guess that's, unless we're gonna be across the board, fair across the board and ask for fees, it seems somewhat selective.
That's mixing apples and oranges.
No,
I'm sorry.
not really.
But excuse me, John, you spoke, if you're hiring an engineer to design a bridge, I mean, there's the guidelines, the engineering guidelines, the rules, there are all kinds of processes about what it ought to cost and all that. But again, as the mayor pointed out properly, we don't issue the contract there, we put the money into it. And we put the money there because you or these folks came to us and said, we need $70,000 to design a bridge. Well, now you're asking us, we need $1.5 million to do this. We have talked about a lot of those fees, because some of the fees went from $4,000 to $350,000 under your watch, because it wasn't based on your original numbers, so I won't blame you for the original numbers. But we have talked about a lot of those engineering fees in these meetings, many times, because we talked about the ones where we approved $30,000, and now we found we entered in a contract for $350,000.
Yeah.
So we have talked about it.
All right, so we got a motion on the floor for executive session, which y'all goes. All in favor, show of hands for executive session. All right, all opposed? All right, so motion fails. We will move forward with the discussion.
If we talked about $1.5 million for this year, I think it's first important. This commission has never seen the contract that IMS has. It was advertised and awarded and given. We've been trained to ask questions about where the money's gone and why. And I understand a lot of things that they do, and I'm not saying that they haven't done anything. They have, and I understand that there might not be adequate staff to be able to do all this. But if, for example, in year 2017, all we're going to do, and I'm just going to make an example like we did in 2016, issue a couple of road paving contracts. We're going to resurface $10 million worth of orange code streets, let's say, like we did this last year. It's not like it's, dozens of contracts out there to be managing or bidding or awarding. And so just because we're going into year 2, without having seen this report that you say this number is based on, that was, I want to say, crammed down our throats in March of 2015, because that's how I felt it was. And without knowing what the other contract is, and I've asked the question 2 or 3 times, I asked a few minutes ago, I'd like to know what we got out of our $250,000 worth of mentoring money that this commission spent that we could have put a water line in with. And before we go do this, I'd like to know what this money is.
Excuse me, where's, what you talk about mentoring money? I'm not sure where's that at.
Your contract is in list over there in the city hall says that it was $840,000, $250,000, or $240 with the TMM hall.
It was a subcontractor,
It says-
and they provided engineer.
It claims it's mentoring. What mentoring?
Okay, but
work
they
is it?
were a mentee, but they also provided services. You didn't pay any $250,000 for mentoring services.
I'm asking how much mentoring was done under that one, and we've had that discussion outside.
It was, right, it was EBO, the meeting the requirements.
That's not an EBO, it says different, it's not listed on the EBO, it's listed on the mentoring.
They were a subcontractor, and they provided services.
Are they gonna be, are they gonna be the sub?
Let's move.
They will be a
Are they
subcontractor.
gonna be
Let's
subcontractors?
move forward with the breakout.
Are the subcontractors involved in this?
Yes.
Let's
Can you
move
identify
forward
which
with
part of it is?
We're gonna start in order with the breakdown.
Basically, if you notice that, like, say, for instance, you got 8 components there. We talked about those 8 components in the previous slide, but just wanted to explain, the $1.5 million is not just for implementing, for the program management plan implementation, but it's for managing the program for 2017. In 2017, this year right now, these are, currently right now, we have 16 projects that is ready for CIP implementation. And here's a list of the projects that we have on the books, and these projects are basically ready. And these are the projects that we are projecting that will go to construction this year. So it won't be just a couple of streets, but as far as the drainage, you got Brook Hollow, Lynch Creek, Eubanks, Forest Avenue, Northside Drive, Belmont, Petmont Street. You got Woodrow Wilson, Riverside. For the bridge, you got Clubhouse, Robinson Road, Altawood, and we're talking about the one that you just approved, which we will be pushing to construct that project by the end of the year. For the water, you got Lawrence Road, you got Woodell, you got Hanging Moss. For the street improvements, you got the Greenway State Street project that's going to be at the end of the year, pretty much. You got the Operation Orange Cone, and which are the current ones that you got going on, which is the major streets, the neighborhood streets, and also too, you got the Operation Orange Cone for 2017. So these are projects that we have listed just for the construction part. And so if you go to basically for technical support, you got over 16 drainage projects that we're going to that throughout this year that we're going to be doing program management.
We put a hold on most of those 6 months ago.
You put a hold on. However, when we talk about
We took the money for the engineering of 10 of those and moved the construction for 4 of them. So we don't have those going on anymore.
I think
Keep on
what
talking
you're
about it.
referring to is just the overall management of
Right.
those 16, if the commission decides to move.
right.
But as of right now, those 16 that we did have, we took the money out of them, about 10 of them, and moved them to the construction.
No, sir. The money is still obligated for the design on those projects. What you program for each one of those projects, the money is still obligated. If you look in the design, the design package, you'll see that the money is still obligated.
Remember, you approved up to $5 million for construction.
So,
Construction, but we took it from the design work of those others. we got the $5 million, but we added up those others.
Right, and then IMS came back and prioritized those projects as it
Right.
relates to what needed to, what needed to go if the commission moved forward with approving additional funds for those projects that were not approved at that meeting.
Which at this point,
Right.
they are projects.
But
Yes, as a matter of fact, 2 meetings ago.
Engineer to design each one of those projects.
Right.
And then a contractor bids it to actually do the work.
Absolutely. So basically.
Someone has to manage that whole process.
Okay.
So for 2017, there's some planning and some design that's gonna have to be done for these projects. And before you even get them to the street to be constructed. So in doing that, we gotta manage those consultants that doing those projects. So basically, you still have, those projects are obligated. Although they're on hold, they are obligated. You got funds in there that could cover that engineering cost. All right, next, we got 9 bridges. We talked about some of them. You got Country Club Road, Robinson Road, Altonwood, Main Street Bridge, Southwest Bridge that we just programmed. And the commission programmed that, approved that 2 meetings ago. And the council approved it at their last meeting. So you got the Southwest Bridge, the West Haven Drive, Canyon Creek, the McDowell Road Extension, Monument, North Mill Street. So those are projects that we're gonna be working, the program management team. So we're not just talking about developing this master plan. We're talking about managing these programs right here. The next one, you got 9 street projects, which we talked about, State Street, McElroy Boulevard, Mill Street, Capitol to Fortification, J.R. Lynch Street, Riverside Drive, Phase 1 and 2, West County Line Road, and then Operation Orange Cone for the neighborhood of Nature Street. And then, as far as water projects, you got 8 water projects that we're talking about, which is gonna be Lawrence Road, Woodell Drive, Hanging Moss, Brook Hollow, Collins Drive, Lakewood, Oak Forest, and Rollingwood Drive. So basically, we're managing these projects. I mean, so it's gonna take our project management staff to make sure that we manage these projects.
So those water line projects that we were not constructing, we just engineered. And we awarded engineering contracts back in early 2015. They're not engineered yet. I mean, most of those water line projects, if there were $200,000-300,000 projects, if they were in that list, was from April of 2015. They're just engineering, so we're still managing the development of the engineering documents that we had funded the construction for. So I mean, what's going on?
Well, basically, during 2016, the project was prioritized for what needed to be done during 2016. We implemented that plan for 2016, but we're talking about moving forward for 2017.
My question to you is like on Colonial Drive or Lakewood Drive, you're trying to say that that's what y'all are gonna be doing in 2017? Because all we got right now is we funded money a year and a half, 2 years ago to hire an engineer. Surely by now, the engineering work on that Lakewood Drive water line, y'all ain't got anything to do with it until we get ready to do some construction with it. I mean, it's not like there's work there to do with it. Oak Forest Drive, all those that we just put money in for engineering 2 years ago, I would think that by now the engineering work doesn't take a whole lot of.
The planning phase. The street work is done on Lawrence Road, Woodlands Drive, and Hanging Moss Road. These are the planning phase projects which is going to come up for future years.
Yeah, but we're not doing anything with them right now.
But
I mean, my point is, there's nothing that y'all are gonna be doing out of this $1.5 million for those projects unless we decide to go move them up and put some money in them, just because we've talked about it before.
But if it's in the program, at any point, the commission could change its mind because the projects are in the program. And so we get.
There are a lot of projects that aren't in the program that we add day by day. We just added one a little while ago. Right. We added 2 bridges last month. So being in the program, that program that we developed back in 2015, in my opinion, with where we've gone and what we've done since then, means very little or nothing. Because we've gone a whole lot of different ways and moved a lot of different, I mean, we're sitting here talking about, are we doing water line projects, and we're talking about we weren't gonna do water. So I'm just saying that a lot of those projects right there on that list don't have anything that y'all will be doing in 2017 out of that $1.5 million.
But that's why it's so important to finalize that master plan.
I understand that, but that's getting
Because all of that is part of that conversation. Because what you're saying is exactly why we made the recommendation that it's time to finalize the master
I
plan.
agree with that, I'm just saying that.
Because
that's not working.
that would have been included, and we would have had the policy decision on how to do it, or at least recommendations.
So, Mr. Calhoun, Mr. Aventer, is this the scope? Have y'all covered the entire scope of the,
At least
of the program
projects
so
in the
far?
program.
Okay.
Yeah, is it in this? I'm having a problem finding it too.
It's not in there. We didn't get that ahead of this meeting when we asked to have this stuff ahead of the meetings.
Could I ask you another question? How did y'all arrive at the $1.5 million? Was it because there was $1.5 million allocated and then you just broke it down? Or did y'all independently come to the number 1.5 million based on the amount of work?
Based on the amount of work, we looked at what was gonna be required for this program. Of course, like say for instance, for the year one, there was $840,000 that was allocated. When we did it the same way that we did that year. We looked at how many man hours is gonna be required to do each one of those tasks.
And let me interject one thing. We always start with zero-based budget. Zero base, as if, you know, this is a new project, new program. It starts with zero base and build a budget. And that's what we did.
Were you here last month, John?
No.
That's not what your staff said last meeting. That's not how we came up with $1.5 million last month. I'm glad you-
What did we say?
You said that $1.5 million was what the number that came up.
It is.
Wait, excuse me. We were told last month that $1.5 million was because that's how much they said we ought to be spending in year 2 from this study, so we started from $1.5 million on building a budget.
No.
That's what was said.
The question was asked about the $1.5 million, and you asked the question, was it a not to exceed? And we said, was it not to exceed? And based on that, we established our budget based on making sure that we don't exceed the amount. But keep in mind now, like I said, we did the same thing that we did for the last year. And the rest of this year, when we did not come to this commission, but when we talked to the city told us they had an $840,000 budget. But when we ran our numbers was way over $840,000. We negotiated with the city, and the city said we could not exceed that budget. So basically, we took that same approach for doing this budget.
And basically, the customary is that it's a percent of the construction cost of those projects. That's how program management fees typically are
That's not
derived.
starting from zero base then.
But you still got to come up with zero-based budget, Pete. That's how you do it in-house, and that's how you operate a company. We're a successful firm. That's what successful firms do.
What percent are you doing based on construction?
What is the percent of that construction?
Well, let's make it easier. It's 10%. We spend basically $15 million a year.
That's all we
I
have.
mean, we basically collecting $13-14 million a year, and so it's 10-11%. I mean, that's an easy answer.
Well, I think you may have programmed a little bit more than that amount per year.
But that's 10% for you, and then another 10% for the engineer that actually does the project, or 6 or 7%.
But Pete, you program more than that fee that you sit here and talk about. You in that program is a much higher number, so you're not really giving accurate numbers.
No,
The construction cost in the program is higher than what you just stated.
This $90 million, $100 million program that we keep saying put in these documents means nothing. We've always said we have voted against that. We've said we're not borrowing $90 million. So just because it's on paper does not mean it's in the program. Now, this is what we're spending a year, is $13-14 million. And just cause somebody keeps on putting these lists out here about what we'd like to have, I'd like to have a unicorn pony too, but Santa Claus didn't bring me one. I mean, there's just so much we're gonna actually be able to do.
But it's what you have approved. And that's
We
what
have
I'm
not
saying.
approved, no, sir, we have not approved.
Those programs, the projects are all
No, sir, no,
approved.
sir. We approved the engineering for those projects, and that's all.
That's okay. Part of the program, even the engineering, the construction costs include engineering. That's part of a
I
program.
understand, but we've.
And so you're trying to dissect something that's not. I mean, that's how you come up with a cost. It's the construction cost of that particular project. And this is not only what IMS does. This Wagner, Neil Schaefer, whoever would be the program manager, they would do it like that.
Let me also add this, and I want to raise this point because this happened when the engineering fees were estimated. And then we came back some 6 or 7 months later after we hired a bunch of engineers, And all of their costs skyrocketed. Almost 2 or 3 times what was estimated. This is no different. Someone else gave an estimate. They probably thought it was a fair estimate. We wasn't privy to, or we wasn't given the benefit of developing a budget that's needed based on the services that was negotiated out of contract. And so what we're doing is backwards. You telling us not to exceed. And so what we had to do initially, year one, we had to pare it down and negotiate a fair scope based on the fee that was set by someone else. So it's no different than what happened with the engineering fees. It was a fee was set by, and then we increased it.
Okay. We got that. John, we got more than water lines. Can we get you to take a look at the rest of that?
Yeah, go back to the, go back to the whole program. Those are the streets, those are the bridges, and those are the drainage projects. Construction, these are construction.
And just for a point of clarification, something that Pete said, I want John or someone from IMS to address. And maybe I misunderstood you, Pete, so don't let me put words in your mouth. Some of the projects, obviously were done before I joined the commission, were approved in some way, shape, or form, whether it be engineering or whatever, what have you. Which of those projects were approved, I think you said 2 years ago? Versus now, and in fairness, I want you to understand why I'm asking the question, because as we consider expenditures for next year, I mean, it can be reasonable. You follow where I'm going? The $800,000 we spent last year, should they not have been covered in that 800? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes. I think if you look in your package under the financial statement, it basically talk about the project in the year that each one of them was approved.
Okay.
I mean, so it'll kind of like break down the budget when it was, the funds was obligated for each one of those projects.
Right.
But this, with this document, it talks about the program year 2. This was the March of 15, not March of 16. This is what the city brought in here. We never even voted to. You say we adopted that, we never even voted on this. This is just given to us as a work session, and it stays around as we talking about $10 million for Rosenwood Drive area and 600,000 for Columbia. We never voted on that.
None of those projects are listed. None of those projects. The only project that we requested from that list right there was the McDowell Road Bridge, and of course you did
I understand. I'm just saying that this list is just like that list from a year earlier, and a lot of that has changed since that time, because we sat there and said, yes, that's what we're talking about, doing a whole different approach that we opted not to do, this commission opted not to do, but it still stays in all the documents.
So I can just bring up a point. We did adopt several things in 2015. And if you recall, there was always a lot of conversation about why stuff wasn't happening. Why isn't this happening? And I would say often because we don't have the staff to be able to move these projects in a timely fashion. And I would say that we needed a program manager. And I think Pete, you and I even had media war about this very conversation about there not being a program manager on. Though, as the data suggests to you, I was absolutely right. We did not have folks on deck to be able to move things. So 2 projects of everything we approved in 15. And then in 16, we were able to move to having 21 projects done because we were able to have a program manager. So my conversation is more about the fact that there is a need not to lose momentum. And I think I'm a little concerned or nervous that this whole idea thought about, well, let's bring it in-house. Well, if you're going to bring it in-house, you don't bring it in-house when you're talking about increasing or moving to the next phase. You do that, you plan for that. Do you know what it's going to take to bring it in-house? I'll tell you, it's going to take us advertising for positions. It's going to take us getting people through those screening processes. It's going to take bringing people in to acclimate them to the program. By then, we've lost 6-7 months just trying to build staffing in the city. Nobody is for building capacity in that building over there more than me. I am all for that. As a matter of fact, I'm the original no program management person. And I came in saying we would do program management in-house, didn't I, Charles? I came in saying that. So I'm only saying I'm only in this room fighting for the maintenance of the momentum. That's all.
I think bringing it in-house is one comment. I think there's several possible solutions that can be one. One is, contract with somebody full-time and have them working over there rather than having a whole lot of hourly rate people and all this. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to approach this other than just deciding, let's hand them another $1.5 million. I think there's other options to look at other than that, and I think it would be fine and good for this commission to talk about the options rather than to be told, this is over. I don't think that'd be a thing.
You might have.
Well, what would happen if only the same amount of money that was available for 16 was available for 17? They should have the same amount of,
It looks like it'll be less work.
It looks like it's the same dollars.
But it's more projects. It'd be more projects in the construction phase, it's more projects to manage, it's more activity. I mean, you're tripling.
Please, tell me which project will be in construction phase in 2017?
We're projecting.
No, tell me, no, if you're projecting, I don't want to project spending $500 million or $1 million on projection that I don't.
Here they are right
here. Wait, Skim,
Here
name
they
it.
are.
The plan.
Put which ones up there?
There they are.
I'll know that.
Here's the project that we are projecting to be in construction by 2017. Right here.
But isn't that about the same as we did this year?
No,
16?
We only about Operation Northern School on
Yeah.
neighborhood streets.
Yeah.
And Hanging Moss Bridge, East Over Water Line, and the Ready Mix Street Bridge. But these are the ones which are going to complete design and then go to construction in 2017.
Assuming you've got money for them.
Yes. When we projected that you will have money.
Oh, you're projecting that we're going to approve the money that
No,
you
we're
Yes, sir,
projecting, we're projecting that you will have money
Make
for
a
those projects.
recommendation that you approve the construction. Yes, sir. That's what we're projecting. That you design and gonna go to the construction.
Are y'all gonna give us any more detail, or is this it?
If you need more, we can do more, John. Yes, sir. We can do
Go into the rest of
it. Right here, you're gonna go. And that was, the construction and the program was included, everything that,
Do you have any breakdown on?
Yes.
I have a question. This $1.5 million that's on here, I'm new to the commission, so I may be asking some dumb questions, but I just need to know. How do you bill the city and invoice the city? Because you have $1,500,000. So if this commission does not, those projects that you're projected for construction, if this commission does not allocate the funds for it, does not approve it, and you're not responsible for managing that, would the city still be responsible, because you're contracting with the city, not the commission? Would the city still be responsible for paying you this $1,500,000?
only if the city move forward with telling us to move forward with managing the project without commission funds.
So
But
it's
the city,
possible.
probably not because the city, but
It's possible that if this commission does not approve or does not allocate funds for some of that construction, this $1,500,000 would not be what the city would pay?
Because what we do is bill by actual man hours. And at the end of the day, we bill monthly by man hours.
So what triggers that? Is it the notice to proceed?
The notice to proceed is the approval of the budget and the notice to proceed. But to answer Ted's question, Ted, you could very well say, well, $867,000, that's what we want to approve. What we'll do is go back and develop a zero-based budget to come up with services that match that $800,000 that you
Well, I
give.
think what we were trying to do was say, here's the projects that we're gonna do, and then you'll know. So that's where I think we're a little bit going back and forth, because we don't know which projects, so we're saying, you got a list of projects up there, but is that more or less in engineering services to cover those projects, or maybe we scale the projects back?
The project,
to next year, you know what I'm saying, that.
Right, right.
The projects that we have listed are currently being designed. They are already in the design phase, and what we just passed out to you there is pretty much showing a table of when those projects are going, we're projecting for those projects to go to construction.
Okay, but let me.
See, but going back to
Wait,
the
you say,
question,
you
I
say
mean,
appeal?
can I answer Ted? Question. So Ted, say if, you know, hypothetically, you say, you know, put a budget together on the services, because one of the things, in order to get what you want, we've got to deal with this master plan. And what all is going to be in the policy that. So you say, put together 6 months. And let's look at 6 months. So, or 8 months of service. Now, by the way, that $800 and some thousand that your reference was actually not for a whole year. It was for actually 9 months, 10 months.
It was activated like the last part of February.
February,
Yeah.
for the balance of the year.
Yes.
Okay, so it was for 10 months of service. But we could very well, Ted, do what you're asking us to do to come up with that 800 to $1 million.